He thinks you want him to wear it as a hat.
That's not what I said.
I'm Groot.
He's relieved you don't want him to.
I am Groot.
He hates hats.
I'm Groot.
On anyone, not just himself.
I'm Groot.
One minute you think someone has a weird-shaped head, the next minute just because you realize part of that head is the hat. That's why you don't like hats?
This is an important conversation right now.
Hello and welcome back to A Stark Contrast, where we discuss the differences and similarities from Marvel Comics to their MCU counterparts. And we are your hosts, Geoffrey
and Dai.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Jeff.
Welcome back. Yes, hello.
What's up? Happy weekend.
Happy weekend. I know. We haven't done a weekend record in a while.
Yeah, actually, which I didn't even really think about until this very moment. You're very right.
We used to record on Sundays pretty often.
When
we first,
there were like a lot of Friday nights, a lot of Sundays, and then we've kind of moved to a Tuesday-ish
it's been like our best in-betweener while still having our weekends.
Yeah, exactly.
But then still at the beginning of the week enough.
Right, to give us some time.
In time for our Saturday release.
For sure.
But yeah.
Wild. So concert season's over? I know it's kind of like up and down.
It's technically over because there's no in my like account. There's nothing coming
There's
up.
nothing out right now. Yeah.
So I'm like, my bank account is like, thank you.
It's weeping.
Please,
mercy.
Let me breathe.
Yeah, exactly. Like if it's not convention season for me, then it's concert season, and that's right around the corner. So I actually don't have any shows.
No more cons for right now.
Oh, that's hilarious. No, I'm leaving for a show this week.
Oh, that's right.
So by the time this episode drops, I will be near leaving Salt Lake City.
That's right.
Fan X, home of the pop culture goodness. I've never been. Miss Tula Lote and I will be there.
Woo!
She's
the best.
Many things. She is the best. And then 2 weeks after that, I will be in New York Comic Con.
Oh,
but
yes.
That is mostly a pleasure trip. That is mostly to see some friends.
Respect.
But I will also be at the show as well.
Finally.
Helping our lovely people. Yeah. I mean, related news, especially to the podcast, I'll be meeting Sebastian Stan.
Yes.
At that show. So that's going to be fun.
Get him on the pod.
I know. I'll be like, hi. Here's my card.
That'd be hilarious.
If you want to come to the museum, and here's my other card. I'd like to be on our show. Yes. Okay. But I guess we can roll right into it. A corrections corner on myself. So we just recorded our character study on the magnificent Daredevil. At the very, very end, the tail end, like the nth hour of our recording, I had a tongue twister and I mentioned David Miller. David Miller is not real. He is very much two people that I amalgamated into one. So the correct recognition would have been Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli. Sorry. Oh, see, I did it again. Caught myself ahead of the next episode.
In the corrections corner. Respect.
In corrections corner. So thank you again for listening to that. If you did, excuse the flub. I've made a note also in our show notes for that episode, just to keep the very dedicated listeners at bay. And so I know we're just barely tipping over the halfway point, but do we want to talk about She-Hulk at all?
I mean, we can bring it up, just a little bit.
I mean, I still am very much in love with Tatiana Maslany.
Yes,
I think
she
she's
is the absolute
fantastic.
best.
Yeah.
Titania is amazing too.
She's hilarious.
Yeah, and then Nikki's also the best. Nikki and Pug.
Oh my gosh, you said it. You can say it on here too. They're basically us.
Like getting all those Avengers, like collecting
Avengers
gear. Avengers. And I texted
gear.
that. I was like, this is literally us.
Yes, it's the same picture. Featuring merchandise created by 100% Soft. Stay tuned for more from him. If you're not following him yet, follow him at 100 Soft on all the things. I mean, we're finally getting the episode that everyone has been dying
I know.
for. And so by the time, of course, this show has dropped, we will have seen it. So
Hopefully.
I hope it's everything and more.
I know. Yeah, just the timing of our
Yeah.
last episode, and then the
perfect
next
timing.
She-Hulk episode is
Yeah.
just a tease of Matty Boy.
Matty Murdock.
So I'm like,
Yeah,
oh,
it's right there. So
yeah.
I can't wait, and I'm sure that we're going to both be very excited and elated on social. And then aside She-Hulk, let's talk a couple of the D23 takeaways.
Yes.
I did not get into the panel for a number of reasons. I went off on social media just
Pain.
because it was
Yeah.
definitely pain. But I did get my one goal, which was the Avengers Con
That's really
laminate.
cool.
Yeah,
Hell
it was really
yeah.
cool, and it's on a lanyard that says New Jersey Avenger Con.
Wow.
As seen in Ms. Marvel. And it was free.
That's
if
really
you took
cool.
a picture with the giant Hulk prop, which was apparently from the show. So they were very much like, please do not touch the fist. The fist is from the set. And then what did people do? They were touching it.
Of
they were
course.
fist bumping
If
it.
you
They
tell
were
people
leaning up
something,
against it.
something they can't do,
Yeah.
they're like, well, I gotta
It was
do
over.
it.
Yeah, exactly. So had a great time with the stuff actually on the floor.
Nice.
But they did show, in the panel, they showed Black Panther footage. They revealed Loki.
Yes.
As well as Captain America: New World Order.
Yes.
Echo, Daredevil. Speak of the devil. The Marvels were all there. Did you hear what Feige said about Iman?
She's the biggest
Yeah.
fan,
Yeah.
and it's like sometimes it's like exhausting.
Yeah, and
It's
then he was like, I almost regret it. I was like, oh, because she's still so very
Such the
excited
biggest
about
fan,
all
yeah.
the things. It's really adorable. And then, of course, Armor Wars. They had Don Cheadle there. They revealed, finally, the Secret Invasion trailer.
that looks dark.
As well as Werewolf by Night.
That
which
one looks super cool.
I thought that is probably the coolest thing they've done in a long time.
Yeah.
Because it is a true departure tonally from anything they've ever done.
Yeah.
And of course, if that name sounds familiar, we mentioned him in the Moon Knight episode.
Yes.
Because Moon Knight debuted in that title, Werewolf by Night, in which many of the other classic characters make their MCU debut, including Man-Thing, which was like the big monster thing that
Yeah.
you see. And a few other, Easter eggs are in there. So that's really exciting. And then almost instantly, I don't know about you, but from what little social I was looking through, people were like, more of this. Marvel, do more horror. And I was like, that's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah.
I like that reception. And then, of course, my favorite reveal from D23, the Thunderbolts lineup.
I know.
Oh my god.
Like, wow.
Yikes.
All right.
Yeah, we're going. So it is comprised of Ghost, Taskmaster, Red Guardian, Contessa, the Red Guardian,
You said
Yelena
that.
Belova.
Okay.
Oh, I did?
You did.
Ugh. Oh. U.S. agent
U.S. agent, yes. And then
Yelena and then Bucky Barnes.
Yes.
Which it didn't really occur to me until like the other day, which is kind of weird, that he's leader of the Thunderbolts.
Is he?
Apparently. Or unless that's Vanity Fair just messing things up again.
That makes sense.
Which is
Yeah.
highly possible. But yeah, so they're noting that the Winter Soldier is actually the leader of that group. Even though, like Elena's in front, she's in front for obvious reasons. But yeah, so that's going to be interesting to see unfurl.
You
obviously.
might get your wish.
I get my Winter Widow. That'll be really interesting. I can't wait. It doesn't come out for another 2 years.
Yeah.
So.
I can't wait to see how it like develops out and how they all got them together.
Got there. Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's
super
gonna be interesting.
exciting.
Yeah. Any thoughts on the two trailers?
Secret Invasion looks insane.
Emilia Clarke. So that's the same footage that they showed at San Diego Comic-Con.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
So that was the exact same.
Exact same trailer.
Okay.
Mhm. They probably like the quality is much better probably, but yeah, tonally and content wise, it's the same thing. So very exciting.
it looks dark and it looks like Fury is in for a
Right.
doozy.
And it's been a while since we've actually spent time with Nick Fury.
Yeah, and now that we're getting a full-on season show with him.
Oh yeah, I
It's a
keep
show.
forgetting it's a show. Oh my gosh, I keep forgetting.
I hope
keep
it's 8
thinking
episodes.
of Secret Wars.
I hope it's 8 episodes. Just give us 8
I know.
episodes. I'll
I mean,
take it.
it's a big thing. I
It
feel
is.
like
Makes me question like everything now. You're like,
Yeah.
I don't know who's a scroll anymore. Like,
I know because I saw, like spoiler alert, I did see some conversation that people already think, what if Rhodey has been a scroll this entire time? And I was like, whoa, that would actually like, what if, here we go. What if he died during Civil War or whatever
Jeez.
when Vision shot him
Yeah.
out of the sky? And then that's the exact moment that a scroll stepped in. And then it's just been the scroll this entire time.
maybe. I feel like that
That
would
would
like
be kinda
affect the
wild.
end of Endgame though, then a little bit more.
That is very true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but who knows? At this point, it's Maria Hill win a whole movie.
I know.
You know, like,
I remember
without
when what was that? Far From Home?
Yeah. Yep.
Like everybody was just like,
She
and
was
that,
like, Nick,
that ending
Nick.
that ending reveal of like they were both scrolls and
Yeah.
you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And now you're like, crap.
Yeah. Yep. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's gonna be interesting. And then in other related news that was revealed at D23, the final day, King Thanos is coming to DCA with that new ride that we've been chitter-chatting about for a while now. Finally revealed that big old HQ hub with the jet on top is actually in fact a ride.
Thank God.
And it's going to be a multiversal ride. And then if you haven't seen it yet, the concept art is really cool because it features not only what is the cartoon called? Is it Friendly Neighborhood No. Spider-Man freshman year.
Yes. Yes.
Sophomore year is revealed as well. But the Spider-Man from freshman years in there, Daredevil's in there in his red suit, which I'm sure was just conceptual art. But Daredevil is there. She-Hulk is there. Like
Everybody that we've
everybody
seen.
is
Yeah.
there. And so I'm kind of like, oh snap.
I wonder if it's gonna be anything like the Star Wars Rise of the Resistance or something in that nature.
Ooh, with the trackless magnet
Yes.
technology.
And just how that, because I tell people all the time, I'm like,
It's the
if you
best
go
ride.
to Disneyland, you need to go on. They're like, oh, because it's one of those only rides still that requires like the reservation or
Yeah.
whatever, and like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, they're like, oh, like Spidey or this, and I'm like,
Oh,
you better,
100%.
I swear to God, you need to go on the Rise of the Resistance ride because it is the best ride like I've ever been on.
Yeah, period.
It's a pure
Hands down.
like 25-30 minute experience of
Yeah.
a ride.
From start to finish.
Yes.
Like Q
Yeah.
to Q.
Yeah.
Q to the
So
end.
that's
is
why
just-
I'm like, if
it's incredible.
I feel like that the Avengers Campus ride, I would hope they would like, okay, well, this ride, the Star Wars ride is
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
like crazy.
Phenomenal.
So you would hope
Yeah.
they would bring something like that to Avengers Campus. And maybe, I don't know, but it seems like it. And it looks big enough. Like the campus, the HQ looks
It
big
looks-
enough to do something like that. That's what I'm assuming.
I agree, and that's only what we can see.
Exactly.
Like who knows what's underground,
Exactly.
what's behind it.
Exactly.
It's gonna be wild.
Yeah.
So yeah. So that comes. I don't know that they announced a year.
No, they didn't. Just the ride is coming.
I'm gonna guess it's next summer. They're aiming for next summer, but if it's not on track, they'll be like fall 2023.
Yes.
That's my guess. So we'll see.
I agree for sure.
All right. Oh, and before I forget, yeah. Josh D'Armo, the chairperson of Walt Disney Parks, also revealed that Hulk is coming to the park in his quantum suit, which is an interesting thought because, as we discussed in our Hulk episode,
Yes.
there is a clause, a rule in which Universal has entitlement to this character in theme parks. So, did Disney get around it by putting him in the quantum suit, or did Universal go, you know what, that's fine, just take it, just take it.
You got to at some point.
Yeah.
Like, what are you gonna what are you gonna do with him? You know?
Yeah.
Like, you can't.
Realistically, like aside the whole coaster, like
Like it won't fit. You
yeah,
know. Like,
it's just weird, right? So yeah, so we'll see. And I, have a theory that if it hasn't been revealed by the time this episode has dropped, that Daredevil will soon be walking the park at California Adventure, even if it's just for a limited time.
Mm-hmm.
Which, by the way, did you see Mandalorian and Grogu? Oh my God. It's
so good.
It's
So many
good.
people are hyped for that.
I'm very excited. I can't wait. It's expensive to go, but man, is it that that little boost of sunshine.
I know.
All right, so I guess we can roll into our wonderful character for today. Reminder, we're not experts. We don't claim to be. We're just a couple of nerds nerding out. And with that, we will now discuss one of my favorite characters in the MCU, Groot.
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 I'm Groot.
Groot. I know. I don't think I have a Groot. I have more of a rocket. Like I do a more of a rocket voice. Like when I talk to my rocket, I use my rocket voice.
Okay.
But I don't have a Groot voice.
I am Groot.
I used to do the baby one really.
I'm Groot.
You're so indignant. I'm Groot.
That's like my favorite one where it was a post-credit scene. I am Groot. Whoa, buddy. Whoa, language.
That's one of my favorite scenes of Star-Lord in general, just because it's so realistic. I mean, we're definitely jumping ahead here, but I do love that just because like he's clearly mocking him. Whoa, hold on. And then of course, like later, later, and then later on in Infinity War.
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine? Can you believe the acorns on this kid?
Oh, God.
So we will get into all the goodness soon enough. But first and foremost, created by Stan Lee, Larry Lieber, and Jack Kirby. Tell me how many times you've heard those three names together. It's like any iconic character at this point.
I know.
Any have been created by these three
You've
men.
said their name at least. This episode 38, you've said their names maybe at least 30 times.
Right? And that's like just minus the mini Marvels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
essentially,
probably,
it's kind of wild. Yeah, there are very few characters that these men have had a hand in creating, but yeah, if it's not Stan Lee, it's Jack Kirby, and if it's not the two of them, then it's a rarity of another person. But they are very much to thank for the creation of Groot, whose first appearance was in Tales to Astonish number 13, 1960.
Wow.
He pre-gamed before X-Men, before Spider-Man, before most of the characters that we're familiar with.
That's crazy.
It's very interesting, and I think people don't really realize that because, I'll get to it in a bit, but there is an era of cards, for instance, where characters were not present. We had this with Shang-Chi and a lot of other characters like that. And Groot kind of falls into this weird time frame where he was just not present. And so that happened a lot, especially with a character from 1960. So in his very first appearance, Tales to Astonish was kind of like also it's very much like a Tales of Suspense, which a lot of the Doctor Strange stuff and all of the older, like Loki and all those characters kind of emerged from. And so it's a digest of different stories. And so in Tales to Astonish 13, there's 3 stories in particular. I'm pretty sure, I can't remember what the last one is, but the second one is about Sasquatch. Sasquatch or Bigfoot? It's one of those.
Are they different?
They're, that's a great question. I mean, depending on who you ask, they're one and the same.
I guess whatever conspiracy theorist you want to ask.
Exactly. We just tapped into a new genre of people, to all our cryptoids out there. And so I wanted to show you, as we alwaess do, the cover of this issue featuring Groot. A very different Groot than you might be used to.
Like a muck man.
Yeah. He's like a
mud man.
A giant sludge
there
wood
it is.
thing. But tell me what is the first thing that you notice on this cover, aside the aesthetic difference?
That he like Groot is the one that's like monochromatic. That's
Aside that, what are some other?
The Tales to challenge the monster from.
Is there anything in the dialogue that strikes you?
I am. Oh, yeah. There's other words that besides "I am Groot."
Yeah, exactly.
Behold, I am Groot, the invincible. Who dares to defy me?
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
So he can. So we'll get into this shortly.
Vin Diesel would like to have a word.
Exactly. Vin Diesel's like, wait a minute. I'm getting clipped here. Yeah. No. So first thing off the bat is that, aside the fact that you're very right, he's not colored whatsoever. But he does say more than the 3 words that we've come to know. But before we get into all of that, let's do some examination of how much this issue is actually worth.
Gosh.
So on Shortboxed, a CGC 3.0. Do you want to give it a go?
Oh, God.
3.0. So that's barely.
Oh, it's nothing.
Yeah. It's like fine.
I mean, like a couple hundo?
No. $3,500
Jesus.
at a 3.0. So that kind of sets the tone. Because, there's so many factors, right? There's factors that, 1, it's from 1960.
Rarity, sure.
2, it's got multiple characters in it. It might be the first appearance of Marvel's
somebody else,
Sasquatch and or Bigfoot. And then, of course, who's tied to it, Stanley, Larry Lieber, and Jack Kirby. But also the fact that in pop culture, this character is very notable now. Very popular. Definitely a household name.
Yes.
So that has a lot to do with it. But on eBay, you can find a CGC 8.0. So if a 3.0
It's 3.5K.
is 3.5, yeah, how much do you think an 8.0 is?
At least 10K.
Yep, keep going.
Oh! 17.5.
Oh, Jeff. Jeff,
Guys,
you're being
who
nice.
has these issues?
I would like to have a word
Come
with them.
forward. You hoarders.
I know. It's like one of those things where it's like, I wish I did do more like antiquing to just stumble upon that one random comic
There
shop
is a
or-
grandpa somewhere in the
somewhere.
Midwest
Yep.
who has an attic full of comics that
Yep.
they maybe have bought for either
face value.
or they got from their grandpa because they took them to a comic store and I was like, oh, let's get that. It's only 15 cents. Yeah, in the 1960s.
Yep.
And they're like, oh, this is so cool. And they stored it
Yep.
for the next 40, 50 years.
Exactly.
And it's just
70 of
sitting
this.
there.
Yeah, exactly.
Come forward. I will fight you. Just kidding.
Let me be written into your will.
50K.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Oh.
it. 50K. So an 8.0. Very well done, Jeff. $50,000. And so
I could pay off my debt right now.
right. And then some. The interesting thing about this listing, and I think it's only happened in one other character study that we've done, is that this seller is boasting that the 8.0 is the 8th highest graded copy in existence. So CGC and whatnot keeps a record, obviously. Each issue that is bricked and slabbed is designated a number.
Yeah.
And so the particular barcode for that 8.0 on eBay is apparently the 8th highest Groot ever graded. So there are only 7 other copies ahead of that.
More expensive.
More expensive, better condition. So that's kind of wild. I'm sure one of them is signed. Probably.
Oh, you add a signature on
You
it?
add a signature, probably added. Yeah, it probably added a $5,000 or more. And then the lowest on Shortbox, nobody has it on Shortbox aside that one copy at 3.0. So don't try looking over there unless you're prepared to pay 3.5. But on eBay, there's a CGC 1.8 for one of your favorite numbers, $2,413. It's a very strange number. I don't know why, but that's how much you can get that issue for in barely readable condition.
Insane.
Insane. So, I mean, this, as always, like is the MCU your first exposure to this character?
100%. Yes.
Yeah.
That first Guardians of the Galaxy was
Yeah.
in general just like, oh,
Mind blowing,
Yes.
right? Yeah. And you know what? Shockingly, I'm going to say I knew of Groot, but I didn't know him nearly as well. Like I knew there was some tree thing,
yes.
but the movie is definitely responsible for any semblance of knowledge that I have of this character.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah.
Because,
I agree.
Yeah, because Rocket Raccoon, I always knew Rocket Raccoon and I knew Peter Quill. And Gamora I was familiar with, but everybody else aside Thanos,
Yeah.
nope, no idea. No idea until like 2012 at least, because that's when one of the earlier, I think 2012, 13 is when the more modern Guardians of the Galaxy books started coming out. Because of course they were pre-gaming for the film.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I said this in a Star-Lord episode. My oldest friend and I were even like, they're making a Guardians of the Galaxy film, and it's kind of like the same with Ant-Man. Like they're making an Ant-Man film, and then
people start thinking about the Iron Man film.
yeah, exactly. And now it's like one of the
Suck
biggest,
it, losers.
And now it's like one of the biggest franchises that Marvel has, all thanks to characters like this tiny tree or big tree, depending on which one you're looking to. So yeah, the trading cards that I actually have of him, I do not have any of the comic book character. Because again, he kind of came in during an era. He was not included in the era, so I should say. Got it. In the 90s and so on and so forth, he was just kind of recessed into the background, not reused until the 2000s. So yeah, I just have one from the animated series that debuted, I think, in 2015, shortly after the first film. A couple from the Upper Deck Comic-Con exclusive movie, like 10 Years of Marvel Studios set. One from this Japanese, I think it might be Chinese or Taiwanese game, like card game set of Adolescent Groot. And then I also included a card of the original an iteration of the Guardians of the Galaxy that has none of the characters that we're familiar with. Yeah. Just to show you for contrast. But whoa. Yeah. So I don't have any trading cards of him, at least that aren't digital, but they'll tell you everything that you need to know. He is a tree. He says 3 words, and his best friend is Rocket Raccoon.
Can confirm.
Confirm. And so so with that, let's just get right into the nitty-gritty details. So Groot, rebel, fugitive, extraterrestrial tree monster. He is of a species called Groot. So it's not just his name. Yeah. Like, first and foremost, if you're listening and you want to play a game, you should count how many times we're about to say Groot in this episode, because there's going to be
shot
there's
every
going to be
time
a counter.
We say Groot.
Yeah.
Congratulations, you're messed up.
Make it a drinking game.
Yeah.
We will see you at the end, and hopefully you're still standing. So species Groot of the Flora colossi. So that's the scientific term. That is plural. So he himself is a Flora colossus, as we've seen him regarded. Yes. So it basically means big
flower,
tree, big flower,
yeah.
big plant.
Big plant. Yeah,
it's a big plant. So, flora and fauna. Whose home world is Planet X, capital of the branch worlds.
Wow.
Yes. So there are multiverses and there are also multi-planets. And so, like we've talked about this many a time, and they've even, explored these in the Guardians of the Galaxy universe. Like they go to different planets, there are different species that take refuge on these planets, and Ego himself was a planet. And so Groot himself comes from Planet X. In branch worlds, that's the capital of the branch worlds. I'm sure you can figure out what that means. Branch worlds, trees.
I hope, yeah.
Yeah, and so the Talunian are kind of like, I guess, what you would designate as their race, I guess.
Ethnicities? Sure.
Yeah, I guess so. Ethnicity of the Flora colossi. And so the Talunian name identification, if you're not looking at the doc, is Groot LXXB11 or II. So in Roman numerals, he is Groot 77.
Oh.
So I know, like, early on that was kind of like, is that his age? Is that a designation? And it's kind of like, well,
are you an experiment?
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's kind of like when you're looking at a planet full of Groots, I guess, you kind of have to be like, well, there's more to it than Groot Jr. and Ms. Groot and Baby Groot, and he's just Groot 77 on that planet. And so the initial issue that is Tales to Astonish number 13 is actually told from a character's perspective. So many of the comics, they have this narrative nature where it's almost guiding you, and there's like a third person, like a Rod Serling from Twilight Zone, like just telling you the story. Mm-hmm. But in Tales to Astonish, it's kind of from this guy's perspective, and he's he's kind of like he's a scientist whose name is Leslie Evans, which, by the way, Leslie is such a 1950s name.
Leslie?
Yeah. Leslie.
Yeah.
It used to be kind of like almost non-binary, if you will. But so Leslie Evans, and he's basically chronicling the story of encountering this alien. And it's very interesting because, in these comics, we've often talked about how the women are very much treated very unfairly, and it's just very dated, and how they're almost like objectified in a way. This is one of those rarities where the woman in this story, I think it's his girlfriend or his wife, she's an absolute awful person. She's constantly berating him in the entire issue, and she compares him to other men. And it's like, oh, I mean, like, I have to pull it out because it's so absolutely, I can't even believe it. And so these opening panels, he's like, it was late at night. Alice and I were returning home from a party, and she was on her usual subject. Honestly, that George Carter guy is a wonderful guy. He's so manly, so rugged. If only you were more like that, Leslie. And so she spends the entire issue like just talking down at him, like,
wow.
Oh, like she's like with him, but she's like, oh, if only you were like him, you'd be so much more interesting. And I'm like, geez, Louisa. And it's such a weird, like, not to drift off into Leslie Evans' side, but it's such a weird thing to explore when the issue is about Groot.
Yeah.
Like, what does this add to the story other than she's just an awful person? So somebody was projecting. And then, as it happens, they're coming back from this party. They're driving home. It's very familiar. Like, it's very similar to a Twilight episode. Twilight Zone episode, actually. And then something just comes out of the sky, and it's it's like a big boom, a big, flash of light. And they're both so terrified by it that they're drawn away from it. And then the next day, because he is a man of science, Leslie decides to go out and explore, like, okay, I have to know what that was. Why isn't anybody talking about this thing? Mm-hmm. And so he very plainly puts it in one sentence. It was a creature of wood who feeds on wood that he found. And so it came to Earth to retrieve an entire town's worth of people for experimentation for his home planet. So Groot ends up being this colossal monster.
Oh my gosh.
He's almost like demonic looking, right? He's got these horns, and he almost looks like Sutter.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. And essentially he summons all the wood in any wood property to come to him, and then he absorbs it.
It's like Magneto with wood.
Yeah, actually, it's very strange, right? Like, he can summon it, but then it becomes part of him, so then he grows bigger. And I'm sure there are many characters that do this, and I can't name them off the top of my head because they just all jumble up. But
Sandman?
Yeah, Sandman's a great one, actually. Yeah, like, so he can summon any of that stuff. It becomes part of him, and then he grows bigger. And so it's so ridiculous. The entire issue is just him being this raging monster that wants to take over this small town. And so it's not even the world thing. He's like, no, I'm going to take your town. And you don't realize how literal it is until you keep reading, because he quite literally, and very much like the first movie where he's making his sacrifice, he's enclosing the Guardians in his own little dome.
Yes.
He does that to the town, and he's like, I'm going to take the town. Literally. And then he branches out to push the town out of the orbit to abduct them.
Oh my God.
So it's very interesting because, again, the dialogue is that he can talk. He has
dialogue. That's
dialogue.
The weird thing.
It's so bizarre. He doesn't say "I am Groot" every 4 seconds. He just talks and talks and talks, and it's like, whoa. It's a huge departure from the one that we've come to know.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Do you want to take a guess at how they take him down?
How the town takes him down?
How the town takes him down, yeah.
They start a fire?
I mean, that's a pretty good estimation, right? Like, so Leslie Evans goes back to the lab. He creates something.
Yeah.
He's like, I've got it. He goes out to the battlefront or the field, wherever, and all the townspeople are like, they have their pitchforks and torches,
Yeah.
trying to take him down. Leslie unleashes his secret creation, and then Groot dies, and they're like, "How did you do it, Leslie?" And he's like, "I created deadly termites."
Oh my gosh.
Deadly termites took down
I
Groot.
was gonna be like a wood chipper.
A woodpecker? Yeah, no, he was taking down by termites.
That makes the most logical sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very, I was like, okay, for 1960, I mean, it seemed like a scary, horrific story that came to a happy ending, at least. And so that was kind of how the original Groot met his fate. And so we'll talk a little bit more about what happens to him from that point. But let's jump ahead a bit in the modern age. He's essentially the champion for climate.
Yeah.
He's much different, in his new form. They did have a brief moment in his history where they kind of bounced back and forth. They were like retconning, but softly ignoring things that they may have written for him, like this issue.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's not the same Groot. That was a different Groot. And then someone else comes in and is like, no, that's the same Groot. He's just different, and so they kept overriding each other, but ultimately they've arrived at that's how he used to be. And now he is very much a champion for climate. He wants to help other flora and fauna thrive. So yeah, he was a climate change champion. He wanted to protect the earth, or
Love
not
that.
the earth, the planet. Yeah.
Stan.
And so this was actually going against the grain with the other Groots. The Groots didn't care about that. They wanted to abduct people like the original one. They wanted to abduct other species and experiment and conquer. And the Groot that we know was like, I am Groot, but in meaning like, I don't want to do that. I
Yeah.
want to help people and I want to help things and I
Yeah.
want to help things flourish. So he was essentially exiled. They were like, you don't belong here. You need to go away. And so he's sent away from his home planet, his home world. And, many times he had attempted to return home, but, we'll talk about this in a bit, but like, when he's exiled, he goes off, and that's when he meets Rocket Raccoon a bit. And so when he started traversing planets and the universe, people would be like, "Oh, where are you from?" And he'd be like, "Oh, I'm from Planet X. I'm the king of Planet X.
Yeah.
I'm royalty. I'm searching for different things from my home world."
Sure. Yeah.
And then by the time that he got back, trying to become one with his people again, they were like, "So we heard that you were impersonating the king." And then they put him in prison.
Oh.
So he can't win. He can't win at all. So if he's not like being like kind of bad, he's also lying.
Yeah.
So he was shunned once again. But perhaps the most notable stark contrast between Groot and his cinematic counterpart is that when first introduced, like we just saw, he could speak full sentences.
Yeah.
And he has also sort of in modern age books. So there's this really great issue of the latest Guardians of the Galaxy run. I think that just ended last year, and it's so mind-boggling because from the first page, everybody is saying "I am Groot." All the dialogue, it's just "I am Groot."
Just, "I'm Groot."
And so you see Gamora, you see Rocket. They're having a confrontation.
Oh.
They're like, "I am Groot. I am Groot. I am Groot. I am Groot. I am Groot. 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 I am Groot." And you're just like, "What is happening?" And then you keep going, and then Groot is actually speaking and conversing in full sentences.
Oh.
And so he's like, "I didn't understand what Gamora and Rocket were fighting about." And you're just like, "What is happening?" But that's how it is.
That's
it's kind
hilarious.
of like the dog thing, right? When dogs can only hear certain words, but you're saying blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. Yeah, it's kind of like that. And so there have been instances where they've played around with the language in the comics to actually really give him a voice, where he doesn't normally have it, so to speak. But that origin of his ability to speak has since been retconned, and so they've only played with it. He is otherwise just, "I am Groot. I am Groot. I am Groot.
I am Groot.
Yeah, I'm Groot." So the question is,
What if we just record the whole podcast
it's just
like
2
that?
hours of "I'm Groot.
Just I am Groot.
I am Groot. I am
I am
Groot.
Groot.
I am Groot.
I am Groot.
I'm Groot. I am Groot.
I am.
I am
Groot.
So yeah, the question is, why is it "I am Groot"? And so it's explained that as children, the Groot as a species
Yes.
they have vocalization allowance, so their larynx isn't as matured as older Groots, and so when they're little, they seem more prone to be able to speak. But as they grow older, it's a genetic defect that tightens the larynx and it tightens the voice box so much that all they can say, "I am Groot." That's all they can do.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Very interesting. So that's like
Yeah.
that's kind of the, and I wonder, like I don't, I've read things from Here to Kingdom Come about the film, and so I've never stumbled upon an article where James Gunn explained for his side of the story why is it like that. But what I think is and I feel like James Gunn is an expert on this character, and so what I think is interesting about Groot, who we're about to discuss in the cinematic realm, is that when you hear, his voice actor, Vin Diesel, execute lines, you do hear this sort of like strain on some words, which is like supposed to emphasize, but it does kind of play into the larynx thing a bit.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, you can almost feel like he's like attempting to say something more,
Yeah.
but it only comes out as "I am Groot." And I was like, that's pretty cool.
The more you know. That's
The more
insane.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's no real explanation except for the fact that that's
Except
what
for
happens.
I am Groot.
I'm Groot. I'm Groot. I'm Groot. So speaking of Groot, voiced by voiced by Vin Diesel, with motion capture work by Terry Notary, Christian Godlewski, Olenjan Thurman, Sean Gunn, and James Gunn himself. First seen in the MCU via Guardians of the Galaxy, last seen in Thor: Love and Thunder. If you still haven't seen it, at least watch it for the Guardians. It's so good. Have you watched it since it's been on Disney Plus?
The movie?
Yeah.
I have not yet.
I haven't either. Yeah, I want to do it because I just remembered. Yeah, I could watch the Guardians.
Yeah.
Yeah, more Groot. And then he is also in the I Am Groot animated series currently streaming on Disney Plus, voiced by Vin Diesel, believe it or not. Created for television by Kirsten Lepore, who is the writer and director of the show. And then, of course, animated by Marvel Studios' Visual Arts Development Team, who we all know and love. But, I wanted to point out Anthony Francisco, who we just talked about earlier today. So he not only created Baby Groot and the concept of Baby Groot, but he also designed the Dora Milaje of Wakanda.
Whoa.
Yeah, so if you want to talk like, the visual artists themselves are like a whole other tier of greatness. Honestly,
Yes,
I love them
100%.
all. I'm sure it shows when I see them at shows. But I absolutely love the range that they're able to do because it really is the same team for each film.
Yes.
They just change
Yeah,
who
yeah,
is
yeah.
in the hierarchy.
Like, and they're able to just like kind of like,
Yeah.
create new ideas.
Right.
And it's like, it's crazy.
Yeah, and so Anthony Francisco in particular, created Baby Groot and the Dora Milaje, but the reel that I showed Jeff earlier from another, I think it's another show, I don't know what it is. They mentioned that they're like, is Groot Filipino? Technically, because Anthony Francisco, and he says this any time you even talk to the man, he's like, oh yeah, I based it off my son. And I remember this very distinctly as well because I was getting I was at the book signing or release for the Guardians cinematic art book. And so they had it at this gallery, this awesome gallery in, where is that? In Pomona, past Pomona.
Okay.
And he was on the roster of artists that were there, and that's where I met Ryan Meinerding and all of them before they got really, really big. Now it's difficult to track any of them down. And Anthony was there, and he was doodling Baby Groot in most. I didn't get it. I didn't ask. So I might kind of kick myself for that one, but he was doodling Groot in people's books if they asked, and somebody asked him the question like, oh, what was the inspiration for Baby Groot? And he's like, oh yeah, my son. And his son was 4 years old at the time, and he's like, yeah, I was thinking, conceptualizing one day, and I just thought, oh, my son's got these big brown eyes, and he's so little.
Yeah.
the body formation is exactly the same as a tiny child. So now there's speculation like, oh, Groot's Filipino.
Hell yeah.
Which I'm like, yes, for our people. So let's take a moment to kind of go down the roster, or at least the ranks of like how we've explored this character in the MCU so far. Like I absolutely love Vin Diesel in this role, which by the way, he's never stepped on set. Neither has Bradley Cooper. Yeah. So go for it. What do you think?
I just like,
Take us back to when you first saw Guardians of the Galaxy.
I think my first thing is just like, okay, obviously, well, Rocket, obviously, you know, it's Bradley Cooper, and like there's a lot of personality that can come through, whatever.
Right.
But then when you're a character of only 3 words, but then you have to evoke certain emotions in just those 3 words. And we've seen like some BTS stuff of like the readings of Vin Diesel saying the lines and everything. Like one interview, I remember James Gunn saying like, oh yeah, Vin Diesel came in on stilts one time for one of the VO sessions because he wanted to feel like the grandiose of being Groot.
Yeah.
And you can see like Vin Diesel like really dig in, like he's like, you know, you're like, whoa. But it's like, I can't imagine like getting approached for a role like, hey, so I want you to be this comic book character, right?
Right.
And he says 3 words. And then you're like, what do you mean? Like, he says 3 words, but I love your voice, and I feel like your voice specifically can bring out this character.
Yeah.
And it's like,
yeah.
I mean, Vin Diesel already is an iconic actor, and he's part of like one of the most like iconic movie franchises in the world. But it's like, you're Groot.
Yeah.
Like now you're like, people know you as Groot, and you've never shown your face, and you only say 3 words.
Which is crazy, right? Like that's a wild aspect, I think, about this character, right? And I say this a lot about both Groot and Rocket, is that what really sets James Gunn apart for me, and he has now since proven that he can do it beyond Guardians with Eagly from Peacemaker, is that he makes you genuinely care and believe that this freaking talking tree and this freaking talking raccoon, like, they make you cry.
Yeah.
Like, they're like the very much the heart and soul of the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yes.
And in Groot's case, he is only saying 3 words. He is never on set. It's not him even doing the mocap, and yet he manages the accumulation of storytelling with all these people for the single character with 3 words is like incredible.
Like, you fall in love with the character like right away. You're like, wow, I care for this character. And like, but he
100%.
only says 3 words. It's insane.
Yeah, it's so great. I love him so much. And I guess this is a good time to talk about it. So, once upon a time, a company called Fuji sent Vin Diesel to my apartment.
You got to resurface it on
on social.
On the
I gotta bring this video up.
We are about to go surprise a lucky fan who won a special delivery of Marvel toys. What she's not expecting is himself is delivering them.
I will post it on social. Maybe we can drop the sound bit in here. But very much, so if you're not following Fuji, you should, especially if you live in a remotely large city, follow them at Go Fuji on Twitter. That's where all the magic happens. And so I was trying to get a free toy for Infinity War. And so they do this periodically with Marvel or Disney properties, any kind of like movie show that is coming out. They send, they hook up with these businesses and they provide like free gifts for audiences that are into it. And so just by tweeting back or mentioning this company in a mention, you have a chance at winning something delivered to your home. And so I saw people getting their stuff and they're like, oh, I got a Captain America pop. And I was like, oh, I want one. So I threw my name in and I tweeted them and I, did the hashtag and everything. And, I got confirmation. Cool. Great. Awesome. I'm getting something great. And then I noticed it was taking a lot longer. So I was still working for Jared at this time.
Yes.
And so I was at home base and I was like, oh, I'm not getting any text messages. And so they wouldn't deliver it to that location. So I was like, okay, well, I only live down the street. I can just go home for lunch and then I'll pick it up and then make sure it's in the apartment and then I'll come back.
Yeah.
And so I kept not I wasn't receiving anything, and I thought, okay, well, maybe they have a huge allotment. It's Infinity War.
Yes.
Like there's got to be a reason for this. And I finally get a text message, and it's unusual because it was an actual human being, and they're like, so we just wanted to verify you're going to be home to receive your reward. And I was like, yes. When is it? Do you know by chance when it's going to be dropped off? And they're like, oh, it should be within the hour. We'll let you know with updates. And I was like, what? This is weird. Like, I've gotten cheesecake before. I've gotten a Ninja Turtle. I've gotten a Ninja Turtles pizza.
That's
like,
hilarious.
I've gotten a poster from Thor Ragnarok signed by Jeff Goldblum. What is the problem here? And then I was thinking, oh, that's cool. Maybe I got and I was joking with a friend. I was like, maybe they're sending me Chris Pratt. Wouldn't that be funny? And he was like, don't get your hopes up. And I was like, wow, okay. No, but I needed that. And so
Stay humble.
Yeah,
Stay humble.
I was like, stay humble. It's good. And up to that point, they had never done anything like that anyway. So I was just kind of, joshing. And so I finally get the text back, hey, our courier set to deliver your prize in about 20 minutes. Will you be there? And I was like, yes. So I said,
This is why I'm home.
I know.
Send it to me. What are we doing?
So I went back home and I waited and I waited and I waited. And I finally get a text, hey, can you come downstairs? We have your thing. And I was like, great. And I was like, I'm really scared for some reason. And I go downstairs and I'm coming down the hallway to the front lobby and I see what someone that's in the business industry or the Hollywood, the entertainment industry would notice right off the bat. And it's somebody with a crossbody bag and a clipboard. And I was like, oh, there's a PA. Why is there a PA here? Mm-hmm. And then I step outside and I see one camera and I was like, oh no, this isn't happening to me. And then I was like, oh God, they've sent somebody here. And then I was like, hi. And the guy's like, so are you ready? Here's your prize. And all I see is somebody carrying this gigantic Baby Groot head. And I'm like, what the hell is happening?
Like, who's behind that?
And I was like, oh, that's really cool. Because it was funny because earlier that week they had done an interview. The Guardians had done an interview and they all had these. And I was like, oh, that's so cute. I wish I had one. And then somebody starts creeping up with one. And I was like, my first instinct was, cool, I'm getting the thing.
Like, yeah.
And then it didn't dawn on me. And then I just hear, I am Groot. And I was like, what? And you see it in the video. I'm like,
yeah.
no way. And it was Vin Diesel.
Vin freaking
Diesel. Like, of course they made me sign something before he walked out, but I was like, oh my God, they sent Vin Diesel to my house. And then, you'll see it in the video. It's about a minute long. We had a nice conversation. We talked for about 15, 20 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was
off camera?
Yeah, off camera. He was really, really nice. I told him about the cat, so he knew about Groot.
Oh.
And he was like, oh, yeah, she has a cat named after me. Like, I was like, oh, he knows. And he was really, really nice. We talked about Earth Day for a bit and how he was like really trying to get rallying people to plant trees for Earth Day, and so go plant a tree. Vin Diesel wants it. But yeah, he was absolutely lovely. And then he brought me this gigantic bag of Infinity War toys that were all Groot. They're all Groot.
Wow.
So I got all these toys, and it was so funny because he was pulling them out and showing them to me, and it was a big old inflatable Groot, and there's like these 9-inch figure Groot, and then a adolescent Groot hot toy and all this stuff. And I was like, oh my God, this is insane.
Wow.
He's like, my kids don't even have these yet. So here. I was like, oh, this is so great. And he was so nice. And then he took off. And then I thought about it for a second, and I was talking to the PA, and he was like, oh, thanks for your cooperation. I was like, oh, thank you. I really appreciate this. And in my head, I was like, oh, shucks, I didn't get a picture with him. Well, I hope they'll send me something, because there was 2 cameras on me. I was like, oh, okay, they'll send me something.
Yeah.
Not only when he got into the van, he stopped and came back out. And he's like, it just occurred to me, we didn't take a picture together.
Oh, wow.
And so he was like, here, no, let's go. Here, where's your camera? Where's your phone? And then so I have quite a few pictures, but here's one that I printed out with Vin.
What a guy.
He's such a great guy. Like, truly, really, really nice.
What a guy.
So Groot is especially special to me for various reasons, but that has a big part of it is because of Vin Diesel and how kind he was. I was like, holy smokes. Like,
good guy Vin.
It was just like insane. So there's no other character will have as much of I won't have a cool thing like that.
Yeah.
Like that's never gonna
That's like a
happen
once
again.
in a
No,
that's
it's
a once in a lifetime
Yeah,
thing for
like,
sure.
Completely by surprise. And so they did this for 2 people. They had never done it before, and so I was one of the 2. The other guy got Josh Brolin.
Oh.
And he was at work. So Josh Brolin came to his job.
Wow.
And he gave Josh Brolin a tour of their facility. And everyone's like, what the?
Is that Josh Brolin?
Yeah. And he gave that guy the gauntlet. A hot toy gauntlet.
sick.
So he put it on and and I was like, I think I looked out. Because I got like, it was insane. Like, I just feel like
that's crazy.
Yeah,
I remember seeing that on Twitter or you posted it and I was just like,
holy.
what?
Yeah. It's so bizarre. It's so bizarre. And that's how I met my good friend, 100% Soft.
Wow.
Because I mentioned him in my video.
Oh.
And he was like, whoa, you won. And I was like, yeah.
That's so.
And then we've been friends ever since.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's
What
pretty
a
cool.
time.
Dude, what a time to be a Dai. so yeah, I mean, from the films, we're going to talk a little bit more about him in comparison here, but we're going to jump into the aesthetics of the character. So in the books, he's a towering tree at 23 feet tall. 23 feet, mind you, which is essentially 3 times as tall as the regular one is. I mean, the regular one that we know is kind of like 7, 8.
Yes.
So 23 feet tall.
It's humongous.
In the comics, with the capability to stretch and grow either way. And if you can believe it, he has had various hairstyles.
Wow.
Yeah, so you would kind of see this in the films with the 3 iterations or 4 iterations of the character that we see. But with like Baby Groot, for instance, he's got the little sprig on his head, which is kind of like a cowlick. And then you have adolescent Groot, which he has moss coming off the side, where he's like
hilarious.
a little emo boy.
That. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the comics, he's had dreads. He's had a mohawk made out of like wood, and he's even had a slicked back mullet sort of thing, which is pretty cool. And yeah, so it depends on the artist, depending on who's drawing him. So I do have a pop quiz for you, which is kind of funny.
Oh no.
So I feel like this is the ongoing pop quiz that never stops giving. Could Cap, Spidey, and or Ms. Marvel lift or stop Groot? Stop the force of Groot.
Oh my gosh.
So if he's 23 feet tall, 23 feet tall.
Yeah.
So he weighs roughly 4.1 tons.
Oh. Okay.
He weighs 4.1 tons. Who knows the force, but he has the force of 8,200 pounds. Could Cap, Spidey, and or Ms. Marvel take that on?
I don't think Cap can.
Okay.
I remember that.
Okay.
Spidey. I think no on Cap and Spidey. Yes on Miss Marvel. Wait, hold on. I know because I remember the Cap question. It was like a ton. It's not. Yeah, that's no.
Yeah.
He's dying.
He can lift a car.
He's
basically.
dying.
Yeah. He's dying.
He's dead. Death by tree.
Dead by tree.
Spidey. How much can Spidey take? Well, I'm also going off. I mean,
MCU. We're talking MCU in this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Captain America almost dropped the thing in the tarmac in the airport on top of Spidey. He caught that.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's pretty heavy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Spidey can, Miss Marvel can, Cap cannot. Yes, that is my answer.
Spidey and Ms. Marvel can?
Spidey, yeah.
Okay. That is correct.
Yes. Oh my God.
You did it. Yeah. So if Groot is at 4.1 tons, Cap can carry up to a ton. Let's not say only because that's a lot. Whereas Spidey can lift up to 10, and then Kamala can carry or handle about 75.
Yes.
So Kamala can.
I know Kamala
handle
can lift a lot.
Yeah, at her embiggened form, she can do some damage or at least stop a 8,000-pound Groot. So that's how they would measure up in the MCU. And then, of course, as far as the MCU aesthetic goes, the motion capture is done by Terry Notary, Christian Godlewski, and Sean Gunn in his adult form. And so we first see this character in Guardians of the Galaxy. He's essentially a big naked tree.
Yeah.
which is kind of funny if you think about it. You're like, oh yeah, he's kind of naked. He doesn't have clothes
Incredibly.
on. Yeah,
Very
like, whoa. Exhibitionist.
I mean, you ever go out to the woods and you see a tree that has
They're all-
friggin' like jeans on? No, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's
Wearing
true.
Wrangler jeans? No.
Exactly. And yeah, it's interesting because, even apart from this origin version of him,
Yeah.
he's gone through, again, it depends on who's drawing the character. And so until the preparation for the film, he looked like, he has like wild branch. He looks like a literal tree. So the top of his head would just be like tons of branches
Yes.
with like leaves on top. And he'd be tall and lanky with very hollowed out eyes until the MCU version started to surface. And so then he became this one that's kind of like, oh, he's got like a shapely head and, like he's more evenly proportioned.
Yeah.
And then, but when it comes to the baby Groots, or the sapling, as they call him in the comic books, it's a bit of a different story. So when Groot splinters in combat, his shards can all be replanted.
Mm-hmm.
So,
oh, nice.
Yeah, that's a huge stark contrast from the film. And so as they grow, the new Groots retain all of his memories. And so this, I think you might be familiar with this dialogue because people kept hounding James Gunn after Volume 2 came out. Is it the same Groot? Is it the same Groot? Because of this. Because in the comics, when it is a new Groot has sprouted, they still have all the memories. They understand, like, oh, okay, that was me. I did this. I did that. I used to be this. It's not the same in the MCU. And so, people theorized that it was the same, but he debunked it on social media.
Yes, I remember
as
that.
He usually does.
Yeah.
And he confirmed that Baby Groot in the MCU is instead the offspring of the original.
Yeah.
So, if you don't know this, Baby Groot in the film is technically Groot the Second.
Yes.
Mo-capped by Sean Gunn and James Gunn.
Goat.
Goat. And yeah, he continues to grow and appear throughout the film in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, because, at the Stinger, he's already adolescent by the Stinger. But thankfully, we have the Groot series because we get to explore a little more about the baby. Mm-hmm. And he's a little sprig with tiny, tiny baby hands and baby costumes and stuff. And so this awesome 3D printing statue that I have under glass is an exact replica of the size of the Baby Groot. And I think I got this on eBay because I was vicious at this time. I was like, I must have everything Baby Groot.
This.
And this was before Hot Toys really got into it. Yeah, and they ended up making a Hot Toy modeled after Baby Groot, this Baby Groot. But this is apparently cast exclusive. So this was a gift.
Oh.
This was a gift given to cast and crew.
Wow.
And somebody on the crew actually sold it. So I bought it.
Why would they
Give
sell
it to-
it?
I don't know. Some people doesn't mean anything to them.
Sure, I guess.
One man's trash is another man's treasure.
Of course.
And so now I have a Baby Groot under glass. But so when it comes to the books, as far as adolescent Groot is concerned, he's notably absent from the comics. So all the baby shards, they just grow very quickly, or they just, for the sake of storytelling, just focus on the baby one because he's so much cuter.
Of course.
He's so much more fun to write.
Of course.
Because he gets into antics. Nobody wants to hear from an emo kid. I love that so much. Yeah, and so he grows quicker. Next, simply said. And there are many instances where he's an infant in the books, but never really in between. He's either tiny or he's full grown. But speaking of adolescent Groot in the films, the mocap for him is Olinian Thurman. He is not Team Groot. He's adolescent, first and foremost, which people often say. But I mean, what is the difference in some respects? First appears in the mid-credits stinger for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and throughout Guardians, Thor: Love and Thunder. Technically, that's the longest standing Groot we've seen to date.
Yeah.
He survived.
He's been adolescent Groot for over
Volume
2-3 movies.
Infinity War, Endgame, and now
Love and Thunder. Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, that's good. It's gonna be.
I wonder if he has ever grow. I wonder if he grows.
He is
Oh.
in 3. He's big.
Oh.
He's big already.
Oh, because you see. Okay.
I've seen the footage. Yeah. Yeah, and like I mentioned before, adolescent Groot has moss for bangs. He's tall, he's lanky, he's awkward, and now he's part of Stormbreaker.
That is also a thing. Yes.
Right. So that's an interesting thought, right? Like, if you go by the theory of the comic books, technically that tree part is a sentient tree Groot.
Yeah.
That should retain the memories of this adolescent Groot.
Yes.
But because they're not playing that game, it's just
a
bark,
part of Groot,
I guess. Yeah. And that's why I think I mentioned this in our Thor episode, at least the Jane Foster one. Like, is it out of bounds to assume, like, what if the reason why Stormbreaker acts the way it does, it's no pun intended, is because it's part Groot?
Oh, like the sassiness?
Yeah,
of,
the sassy
of
is like,
Stormbreaker in Thor Love and
is
Thunder?
adolescent Groot.
It's because it... that's an interesting theory.
Right?
Yeah.
Or Groot 3.
And honestly makes hilarious. It would be hilarious.
Yeah, exactly. So speaking of Big Groot, we're coming back to, the original. He is very much in the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 footage I saw at San Diego Comic-Con. They don't show much of him. They don't show Rocket at all. Let me just get that out the gate. They only show Baby Rocket, which is like, oh my God, he's so adorable. I can't.
He's gonna die.
I know. Like, don't say that. He might actually die. But yeah, in the trailer, and I can't wait for the Baby Rocket merchandise. Oh my geez, like
Baby
yikes.
Rocket, Baby Groot merchandise.
Oh my God.
And then you have Grogu merchandise.
Yeah, all the kawaii effect. So yeah, in the footage that they show, Groot, I believe the only time you see Groot, he's wearing one of those colored spacesuits.
Okay.
That if you've seen the leak, they're wearing spacesuits in a lot of it. And and I think that's the only iteration that you see him. And then there's a very quick flash of him and I think Peter back to back, and he's equipped. He's bigger. He's way bigger than he ever was.
Quill?
No.
Sorry.
Groot. So he's like muscular almost. It's kind of crazy. And
been hitting the gym.
Yeah, he's like pretty much like he's lifting.
Respect.
And he's got tons and tons of guns on his shoulders. Like because he doesn't have Rocket in that scene.
Oh,
so I'm
shoot.
like, how'd they get there? Yeah, it's a lot of fight and a lot of emotion. I think is gonna come out of that film, but they haven't yet released the trailer, so we'll see.
They gotta release the Christmas special trailer
I know.
first.
I can't wait. So, are you ready for your next pop quiz?
No. The answer is I am Groot. I'm Groot.
I am Groot.
Sorry.
I'm Groot. I am Groot. I am Groot. Or I am Groot.
Yes.
So, in the classic, iconic prison break scene of Guardians of the Galaxy, the inevitable team is seen wearing yellow prison suits.
Correct.
Aside Groot, it was a cost issue apparently, so he's still a big naked tree. The stripes on the left pant leg symbolize which each Guardian's offenses included.
Uh-huh.
Which of the following is not an offense of Groot's if he wore pants? And these are confirmed by James Gunn, by the way. So I'm going to read you a list of things that Guardians are in prison for.
Yes.
Which of these are not Groot's?
Yeah.
Public drunkenness.
That's definitely not.
Moida, murder. Grievous bodily harm. Mercenary activity. Criminal conspiracy. And escape from prison.
Oh my gosh.
And I will say, 3 of them do belong to Groot.
3 of them
3 of the ones that I just read do belong to Groot.
So I have to choose the one that...
Choose the ones that don't.
Oh, just choose the ones that don't belong to
Or
Groot.
do. Whichever way you want to slice it.
3.
So public drunkenness,
That's 1.
murder, grievous bodily harm, mercenary activity, criminal conspiracy, and escape from prison.
What is grievous bodily harm?
Yeah, it's like, he's like, he's maimed them. They're not quite dead, but he has caused them irreparable harm.
I feel like Groot is like the nicest guy.
He's just a twee. He's just a twee.
Because I feel like when I think of the first time meeting them in the first Guardians of the Galaxy, he was like, he doesn't want to hurt anybody. He's just doing whatever.
Don't drink the water fountain. It's nasty.
He's like, oh, we're gonna take you in, and Groot is like, hey. Not So I think it's the bodily harm, drunkenness, criminal conspiracy. He does. Yes. Because, conspiracy, but he doesn't physically do anything.
Okay.
Has he escaped from prison before? What did he say? I keep thinking of that lineup, and I'm like, it says the things they've done. Oh, the mercenary then.
Okay.
That's fine. Yeah. So those three.
So your final answer is public drunkenness, murder, and grievous bodily harm.
Yes.
You only got one.
Ah!
So while the others belong to other members of the Guardians.
Yeah.
So public drunkenness, definitely Rocket.
Yes.
Murder, Drax.
Yes.
Grievous bodily harm is indeed Groot's. Mercenary activity is also one of Groot's.
The activity, yeah.
Criminal conspiracy is, I believe that is Rocket or Drax.
Okay.
If not, also Gamora.
Yeah.
And then escape from prison is also Groot's.
Damn.
So it's because of he and Rocket. So Rocket essentially brings out the
Escape
worst.
from prison
Yeah.
also, so whatever
they
Rocket
escaped,
does.
Yeah, and I think he says it. I think Rocket even says like, "Oh yeah, me and Groot escaped prison.
Okay,
Blah,
that's what I
blah.
thought.
We've escaped this prison." All this. Yeah. So
That's what I
that is
thought.
it. Yeah. So Gunn clarified in 2018 that each stripe on the prison uniform pant leg represents a crime with different colors defining the category of the crime. The pattern of the stripes also gives more detail about the crime and its severity. And then he credits the film's costume designer, Alexandra Byrne, for coming up with the designs. So if you look closely at the yellow uniforms, you see and it's hilarious because Quills has a little bit, and then Rockets is it's pretty formidable, and Drax you can't really see, but Gamora, it's all the way down to her knee.
Oh my god.
Because she's got tons of offenses. But speaking of the lineup, his prison stats, on the screenshot, I'll post this on social. It does show one thing that was on that list. And so the stats read, subject Groot, description, humanoid plant inhabitant of Talunia, associates 89 P13, and then criminal record, 3 counts of GBH, which is the grievous bodily harm. Yeah.
Pain.
Yeah. So they go in real deep with that stuff. I was like, wow, okay. And then we're going to pivot over to powers next. And this is actually quite more simple than expected, maybe for some people. But, aside the regenerative properties and a difficult to destruct exterior, Groot only has 2 identifiable power properties. And so these are just healing factor and superhuman strength. He has, however, also displayed psychokinetic capabilities. And he does that in his origin story, as well as I think some of the modern books, where he's able to control trees into animation. So he can command a forest to turn into an army.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And I swear that this happened in a Lord of the Rings film or something.
Yes.
It did,
vaguely,
right?
Very vaguely. I think that's
remember, I can't quite pinpoint, but I'm sure somebody knows what I'm talking about. And so when he commands the trees into animation, this inevitably powers himself in the process. So he's quite formidable when he wants to be, and we haven't yet seen this kind of power in the films, but that would be pretty dang cool if you ask me. And of course, it's not to be overlooked that he's quite the engineer and a tinkerer. And then that's it for powers. So we're gonna go into a more, I guess, flourishing, no pun intended, topic, which is the family, friends, and affiliations. So a funny thing about Groot, we love ourselves a unified Marvel universe. So in the books, believe it or not, Groot once tried to play nanny for Luke Cage and Jessica Jones's baby.
Whoa.
It did not work out. It did not go as expected. So actually, speaking of, Jennifer Walters tends to babysit baby Danny for them quite a bit. Jess and Jen are very good friends in the comics. And then, Groot, or a version of him, was even a member of Nick Fury's Howling Commandos.
Whoa.
Yeah. Featuring a modern lineup. And so what had happened was that essentially Nick Fury brought a new team on board. They started to go after, galactic threats, as they do, because he was the man on the wall. And so he had to save Earth from any impending doom. Mm-hmm. So he had this version of Howling Commandos go after Groot because he was an intergalactic threat. But in the squabble, while he was prisoner, another threat came into the fray, and then Groot helped them defeat that threat. And so they're like, oh, you're good after all. Join the team. So he was a howling commando.
Wow.
Which is kind of funny. It's like,
damn, that's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. And so, of course, it goes without saying, however, that the Guardians are his tightest crew. And so, we could talk for days about Guardians of the Galaxy, or at least I could. But I'm going to, just keep it really tight with just an overview, and then we'll talk about, the big man himself, Rocket Raccoon. But, like the cards, the Guardians have a vast rotating roster. And so Groot didn't even join the Guardians until his involvement during the Phalanx invasion upon the Kree on Hala. So all these words are coming together. I know that was a mouthful, but there are some obviously familiar attributes. Kree, Hala. So the thing that you're probably not familiar with are the Phalanx, right?
Yeah.
So the Phalanx are essentially this techno-organic alien species. They're made popular by the X-Men series.
Okay.
In comic books, and so if you're familiar with New Mutants, or there's this character named Warlock who is not Adam Warlock. It's a different Warlock. Totally different.
Okay.
And he is this like wild looking, like yellow and black, detailed alien who is essentially he could sync up with your computer. He can assimilate to anything that's remotely technology based. And so essentially that species was invading Kree, the Kree people of Hala. And so he was imprisoned while trying to intervene, and that's where he met Rocket Raccoon in prison. And that's one of the first times they broke out together. And it's interesting because they even noted in the book, like, he is bonded with this Rocket Raccoon character. Like, they're just like, he bonded with it.
Yeah.
And they don't know why. They're just like, oh, they bonded.
It works out.
Yeah. They understood each other. And so the two were forced to join a team formed by Star-Lord, as seen in the Annihilation Conquest storyline. And that's the one that we visited in our Star-Lord episode where he had the bionic implant of his eye.
Yes.
That's the same issue. So it's the same issue that Groot is first introduced with Rocket Raccoon, and they make that version of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Wow.
Rest is history. Yeah. And so, Guardians of the Galaxy in the MCU, portrayed by Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, Dave Bautista, Karen Gillan, Palm Clementif, and Sean Gunn in their respective roles. Need not to repeat who they play. If you don't know by now, you're listening to the wrong show.
Yeah, sorry.
We have nothing for you. And then, so, how have you enjoyed the intermingling of Groot within the larger spectrum that is the Guardians?
I mean, it's just just absolute perfect collection and melding of characters.
Yeah.
They just work. I mean, that's just like an attribute to James Gunn and like what he's done and all these actors that have portrayed them. Yeah, it just works. Like these ragtag like people, group of like individuals.
What does Quill call them? They're losers. They're losers.
We're losers. You guys are losers.
We lose. We have lost. Yeah. No, I agree. Right? Like and they each have their time together. Like even with the original film. In that first scene when they're all kind of gunning for the same thing, right?
Yeah.
They're going after, like, Rocket Raccoon and Groot are going after Star-Lord, and Star-Lord has the orb, so Gamora's going after him, and he's trying to, like, they're all just crashing together to the point where Gamora is attacking Groot, and then Groot is bagging Gamora.
And Drax wants to kill Gamora because Gamora's father has killed his family.
Exactly. And so it's all this intermingling and clashing of their personal journeys. And, of course, by the third arc or whatever you want to call it, into the near climax of the film. Yeah. They come together as this family, and that's when we hear the very first variation of "We are Groot." We are Groot.
The only time we've heard it.
Yeah, and the only time ever, since then that we've heard it, and how closely knit that they became with one another, and
because of Groot.
Because of Groot. Yeah. And see, that's crazy, right? Like who knew that this little tree would be such a catalyst when it came to something like that?
Crazy.
And also just have the capability to also like kind of soften these characters that are otherwise really rough around the edges, like Gamora especially, Drax especially, even Nebula, like in the second film, he's had his effect on all of them in some way. And he has this ability to speak and convey beyond words, which, it's a notation of interpretations. And so that's something that they balance really well in the books as well. Cause like in the books, like they mirror that perfectly, where that when it's clear that someone has spent enough time with the tree, they understand what he's saying perfectly.
Exactly.
They understand, like Rocket, like he could be talking out of his rear end half the time, but he clearly understands, and he's like translating for the kid, Yeah. And so he's like, oh, he doesn't like hats. And then I am Groot. He says that he's afraid of hats. I am Groot. And like he just keeps interpreting, the more that Groot responds.
What button do you press?
Yeah.
I am Groot. No, that's the button that will kill us all. Okay. What do you do? I am Groot. Yes. And then
I am
Groot. Okay. Which button do you press?
I am Groot.
I am Groot. No! We're going to die.
And it's great because like it really leaves the viewer to interpret the dialogue.
Yeah.
And that is also something that, oh my God, if I ever get to meet James Gunn again, I just want to be like, bro, can I get Vin Diesel's version of the script where it has everything translated?
Yeah. Because there's like a translation. There has to be.
He has absolutely confirmed there is. And he says that Vin is the only person
that sees it.
That sees that script. So he knows how to say the I am Groot. So he understands exactly what he's interpreting or trying to interpret to the audience by inflecting the way he does.
Yes.
So I would die to see that thing. I just want to see it so bad. And I love the effect that he's had on the Guardians, in the Guardians as a teammate. And in the books, he's constantly present now. Like, they've changed rosters even since the film, and some people have rotated out while others come in. And right now, I think it's more or less the core team, and then I think Warlock is around. I can't remember who's around. But yeah, it's pretty good. Like Hercules was on it with Norvar at one point. Yeah, it's just a ton of great characters. So I'm excited to see what they do with him in the holiday special as well as Volume 3.
Yeah, Volume 3 is going to be emotional.
It's going to be very emotional because it is very much about the next character we're going to talk about in short, because I absolutely 100% want to do a Rocket Raccoon episode. It's only right for my child who is asleep on the table by the same namesake. So yeah, when you look up anything about Groot, while the Guardians are undoubtedly an important part in his life, it's Rocket Raccoon that will stand out among the rest. And so it is just, they're connected at the hip at this point. Like ever since that first appearance, well, not a first appearance, but that first vision of them as a quote-unquote team, they have been inseparable.
Yeah.
And they've had squabbles in the books. Like, they get mad at each other very easily. It's like any, partnership or couple would. But they're very much like family to the point where they do assume like a father and son relationship at times. Sometimes they're like brothers and they have fights, and Groot is like, I am Groot, I am Groot, I am Groot. And how dare you say that to me? They have these moments.
The best.
It's just the best. And they've had their own series together where they have a bunch of solo titles as well, both separately and together. And so, yeah, I'm not going to expand on him because we can talk about him on his own. And what more is there to say? Because you see it all on screen. Mm-hmm. That's the same relationship they have in the books. Yeah. It's exactly the same.
Love that.
Yeah. And of course, Rocket Raccoon himself, portrayed by Bradley Cooper, or at least voiced by, and then motion capture by Sean Gunn. Which is so funny.
Yeah.
And so when we first met Rocket and Groot, it's clear that the two have been partners in literal crime for a very long time. And yeah, we first met them on Xandar. I rewatched this just for the sake of rewatching it yesterday, and I was like, God, it's such a great scene. It's such a great introduction to these characters, And yeah, they're looking for the bounty. the bounty hits, and then they stumble upon Peter Quill, and then he's being chased by Gamora, who's seeking the orb, so on and so forth. So I kind of just wanted to briefly touch upon all these scenes where these two, in particular, have their dynamic, and how what do you like? What are your favorite moments?
I love their banter together is just like. And the way in combat, and then when they are speaking about something, like what comes to mind, like even like the breakout from the kiln,
dude. That freaking I remember seeing, because the kiln. I mentioned this in the Star-Lord episode. The kiln was the first long preview.
I remember this. Yeah, that was the very first thing they showed.
And that part, that scene is what really locked me into being a believer of this film, because when they showed the animation of when Rocket is literally climbing him, he's going around him, and he climbs up on top to his shoulder. Yeah. And then he gets the gun and he clicks it. And he's like, yeah. I just thought that was so freaking unique and so greatly animated.
Because the best part of that scene was just okay, how do we get out of this? And Rocket's like, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do that. First, I need that guy's eye. Yeah. I'm like, what? I need that guy's leg. And then I need da-da-da-da. And I need this. And how are you supposed to get that? I got to do this, da-da-da-da. And but the first thing is I need this battery. Yeah. And then Groot is just
pulled it.
He's like, or we do it now.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you just, hey, you voted whatever Rocket said. I don't have my guns.
Yeah, I just love it, and it was just so unique in the way that they depict them too, and you really not to repeat ourselves too much, but you really do feel and get the sense that he's this big hulking tree, and you can hear the squeaks when he moves, and he's able to communicate with this little freaking trash panda so well. And then there's of course the Collector meeting the Collector on Nowhere. And Benicio del Toro portraying the Collector and how he measures him up.
What is that? I'm Groot.
I know. He very proudly and his chest Groot. Even he said, "I am Groot."
Hilarious.
And what does he say? Upon your what does he say? Upon your demise on this planet or this universe.
How much for the tree?
Immediately tries to buy him, which. I was going to say this as we talked about adversaries, but that is a callback to the comics, which I'll expand on in a few minutes. But that's once again, this is the artistry that is James Gunn and being a comic book fan, is that there are all these moments that are right there and they're Easter egg. And you don't really know because you kind of think, it seems so seamless and it flows so well that you just think, it's really written in the script. And it's no, it's actually an Easter egg of some sort, which is very commendable. And then, of course, escaping to nowhere and colliding onto Xandar. So when they were escaping nowhere because Ronan came.
Yes.
And that whole, he couldn't fit into the pod.
Yes.
And so he eventually got off there. I forgot how. Milano, I think. He got on the Milano, and then they were on Ronan's spaceship where he made the grand sacrifice of encasing the Guardians and made everybody cry.
Groot, you're gonna die.
No, Groot.
No, Groot.
You'll die.
You'll die.
And it's that theme destroys me every time. That one, I just, and you know which one it is. When you hear this, if you're like me and you're listening to the soundtrack and it comes on, you're just this is the song that Groot dies in. And it's I'm feeling emotions. And honestly, up to that point, even when seeing the film, I hadn't really felt compelled to cry until that moment.
That was very...
you feel it, right?
And you're this is this is something,
the
right?
tree,
something's happening.
The tree is making me feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, that brings us to Baby Groot. So Rocket and Baby Groot, very much father and son, which is interesting because, throughout that film, even with playing the Cat Stevens song, Father and Son, sure, they show Peter and Groot, which, sure, that makes sense. And Gamora is his mama. But it really is Rocket and Groot. Like
100%.
Yeah, he takes care of that kid like it's his own.
The confirmation was from Infinity War. I think James Gunn said it, right? When he got snapped.
Yes.
They were like James Gunn, like we need to know like what did Groot say before he got snapped?
Yeah.
And then James Gunn was like, oh, to Rocket he said, Dad.
Yeah.
And then everyone was like, what the fuck? Why would you say that?
It's the worst. I think I literally started crying. Like when I read that.
Why would you confirm
that,
you monster?
I swear to God, James Gunn, he knows exactly what to say to pull the heartstrings. Yeah, so if you didn't know that, lovely listeners, that tragic little scene, I was like, no, Groot, not again.
No, Groot.
I am Groot. He's literally saying, Dad? Which is like,
what the hell, man?
It's so messed up.
Like,
baby.
what?
Oh, my poor little baby.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so absolutely love their dynamic there. And, and of course, thank goodness when he's brought back to life, like, they're co-oping all over again. And, he takes care of his kid, even now, even throughout the newer series. And what I love about I Am Groot, in the episode that Rocket Raccoon is actually in, is like he puts on his glasses like an old man. He's like, what is this? What is this now? What is this? And he's like,
it's us.
Yeah. It's like, I guess that's okay. Love the dynamic. And yeah, it's kind of wild to think that we've never seen Bradley Cooper and Vin Diesel in the same room together. Like they've never done interviews together, nothing.
Never done any of the press tours ever.
Nothing, yeah.
Obviously for other reasons too, for some certain actors, but
for some exes to collide.
But sure.
Yeah, and that's another thing, like the chemistry test, like they didn't even have to take it, but yet they passed with flying colors and they've never been in the same vicinity, which is not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
So when it comes to notable adversaries, I absolutely did not want to go into this too deeply because quite frankly, it's anybody who fights against the Guardians. Like
pretty much, yeah.
Groot himself does not have an arch nemesis like many of our heroes do. He started as a invader, so he was the adversary, and so and the people fighting him were townspeople, a man named Leslie Evans. Like there's not really a arch nemesis to be found here, but as I just mentioned, the Collector is actually a notable one, and back to the Tales to a Stand number 13, Groot was defeated, and so when his trunk lay dead upon the grass, he was then collected by the Collector. It doesn't show it in the issue. It's a callback in a future issue, and so they go back to it in a more modern era. Maybe not modern. I use modern loosely, but in an issue much later, it's revealed that Tanalur Tavan collected the corpse and then put it in his collection.
Jesus.
Yeah, and so
Tanalur Tavan.
Here we go again. So Tanalur Tavan, the Collector, under his keeping, Groot was revived.
Yeah.
And then and kept in one of the many chambers of his collection until a villain named the Mole Man.
Oh gosh.
freed all the prisoners from the Collector's clutches. And Groot got free, and he is out and about. But I wanted to expand very, very quickly on the Mole Man because he is on the ranks of Stiltman and all of those precisely named villains.
Love that.
Mole Man, if you are not familiar with how he looks, he's kind of like a short and stout man, and he's kind of got a receding hairline. He's got Coke bottle glasses, and he wears green. And he looks like a mole. He looks like a mole. Let me just call it what it is. And so he was the Fantastic Four's first and recurring villain. He is a recurring villain for the Fantastic Four.
One mole man against
mole man.
4 fantastic people.
Yeah, and I wrote down here in my notes, skilled in a bojutsu-like fighting style with radar senses.
Oh.
Because of his bad eyesight. Because he can't see. He's like a mole.
Yeah, he's literally
a mole.
It's honestly
Oh,
hilarious.
he's so funny. He's so wicked looking. He's like this little like I would love to see somebody like Mole Man like in a She-Hulk series. You know what I mean? Like She-Hulk or like Deadpool, and he's just one and done. But you know, of course, like we just mentioned, the Collector in the films, portrayed by Benicio del Toro, first seen in Thor: Dark World, the stinger at the end, and then last seen in Avengers: Infinity War, and actually isn't necessarily the last real time we've seen him because that was a projection.
Yes.
So we haven't seen the Collector. Nobody has an idea of where the Collector may be. But yeah, he's the leader of the intergalactic conglomerate entity known as the Tavon Group. And he is the brother of the Grandmaster of Sakaar, a.k.a. Jeff Goldblum, which is fun.
Hilarious.
Maybe we can talk about them one day together.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, that brings us to Thanos. And you know what? Nothing much to say. It's a family thing. With the Guardians come Gamora, and with Gamora comes Thanos. What more is there to say? Who, of course, is portrayed by Josh Brolin. And same goes as is in the books. Thanos is not... He does not have a distinct goal to go after Groot. He just happens to be in the realm of heroes that he's fighting with. And so that brings us to love interests. And there's none.
Who's falling in love with a tree?
I mean, look, there are plenty of fish in the sea. Sometimes they're trees, and sometimes they find love. But for Groot, there is none of that. And he is, you know, if you have to categorize him, I would say he is asexual for all, you know, for what it's worth. But
Nice.
I did want to note one character. I have this screenshot somewhere and I will pull them up. But there is a character in the comics. Her name is Hannah. And so Hannah, she was actually not featured until the end of the Groot comic series. It's a solo series. And it's a very sweet story where, you know, it backtracks to a time when Groot saved a Terran, you know, from other aliens of his own planet. So, like I mentioned, you know, the Groots of Planet X were all like, oh, let's get different species and races and do experiments. I am Groot, I am Groot, I am Groot.
Yes, I agree.
I am Groot. and so once upon a time, they abducted a young girl named Hannah, and she was like, you know, 6 or 7 years old, maybe. And Groot found her, and this was around the time where he was like, oh, this is not right. You can't do this. We have to return her to her own planet. So he saves the girl. He saves Hannah. And as he's doing so, the other Groots are like, what are you doing, you traitor? And he sprouts a flower.
Yeah.
And it's a bioluminescent flower.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
he gives
yeah,
it
yeah.
to the girl. That is another Easter egg from the film.
Oh,
When they're on nowhere, he plucks the flower and pulls it off and gives it to the little thief.
Yes.
So that's the Easter egg.
Oh.
So he does that in this comic, and he sends her back home. And he goes in front of the council. He meets his fate. He's exiled again for doing that, for saving her.
Yeah.
And so as the series comes to an end, he goes to, of all people, for help. He goes to Jean Grey because she's a telepath. So she can understand what he's thinking.
Yeah.
And so he tells her, he goes, I need your help finding somebody.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, you have to understand, it's not that easy. I need a memory or something. And he reveals to her what had happened. He reveals that he protected this girl, he saved her, and he's like, I can't even recall it in perfect form because it makes me very emotional.
Yeah.
But when you read it, just read the last 2 panels.
Okay.
I reread it last night and I started crying, so I'm gonna cry again. I can't cry again. So basically he goes to help her to find her to say thank you.
Yeah.
So swipe to the next page. And then he finds her and he says thank you.
Wow.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful story.
Oh, he looks so sweet.
Yeah, he's a great guy. So there is no love interest for the character, but
he just cares.
yeah, he's a big old tree. He's
Love
so
that.
lovable. I love him so much.
He's the greatest.
He is the greatest. Ah, I'm not crying. And so,
Guys, she's definitely crying.
I am definitely crying. Jesus, comics are amazing, guys. So yeah, there's no love interest. It's one of those instances where you just don't need one. He's perfect as he is. He serves the purpose that he has. I think he's a beautiful character. He doesn't need to change. And he certainly doesn't need like a love interest to be any better. You know what I mean? And then in other versions and in other media, I mean, most, if not all, depictions of Groot beyond the comics have essentially adopted the cinematic version. So he looks like him. He sounds like him. Like, what else is there to say? But I did want to note a couple of versions that are worth speaking of. Guardians of the Galaxy in the animated series of different, they've been in crossovers and they've had their own series, but he was, if you can believe it, originally voiced, I had a lot of fun doing this part. He was originally voiced by Michael Clark Duncan.
Wow.
But he unfortunately passed away.
Yeah.
And he was replaced by an actor, a voice actor named Kevin Michael Richardson, who tends to do Groot's voice in most of the media that we see now, as well as Troy Baker in Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. And so if Troy Baker sounds at all familiar to you, Troy Baker is the man responsible for making Hulk hot in the Avengers PS4 PS5 game. And he is one of my favorite, officially all-time favorite characters, Joel Miller from The Last of Us.
Wow.
That he was Groot. Yeah, he was Groot once upon a time. And of course, not to be overlooked, young Groot, voiced by Connor Andrade in the Spider-Man series. And, again, across the board, very much the same depiction made famous by James Gunn in the films. So he's very consistent. He looks the same in the, he's got some variations like we've seen in the Guardians game itself, too. He has different uniforms. He's a little darker, like that. What's that crazy one that he looks like he's like Halloween and he's like fiery looking?
Oh my gosh.
The Apocalypse version.
Yes,
I love that set. I think that set of costumes is so good. But yeah, he looks the same. He's still Groot. You can see him when you just get a glimpse of him. You're like, that's Groot. And then of course, the Disney Parks version. I have a picture with when he first started appearing at the parks. I was like, oh my gosh, it's like it's 7 feet
like
tall.
Like humongous.
Group. Yeah, and I have a picture with him, and it looks like a prom picture.
Oh yeah.
it's me and my son.
That's
so cute.
Oh my gosh.
And that one actually spoke to me, which I thought was crazy because they're not supposed to do that. Oh. But he did the I am Groot. I was like, whoa! And it's a person on stilts.
Love that.
But in the actual parks itself, there are two rides. Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout and Cosmic Rewind. And so in both of these rides, he unfortunately is not voiced by Vin Diesel, but a man named Fred Tatasciore, who we have talked about very briefly.
Yes.
And he did miscellaneous voices in I Am Groot.
Yes. This
is the guy I shared the car with. The guy I shared the car with in, what was it? Where was I?
What con was it? In South Carolina?
Raleigh.
Yeah. North Carolina.
Yeah, and he's from here.
Yeah.
But we shared a car to and from the airport together. So that was Fred Tatasciore. He's the one that says that's Groot in the rides. And that's why I called him an icon. Like the girl next to me was like, oh, what do you do? The cosplayer, oh, what do you do? And I was like, he is a legend. And she was like,
just
a legend. He was like, oh, you're being nice. I was like, no, you're really a legend.
Oh my gosh.
And he is Groot. And so yeah, we've additionally seen Groot in Disney parks, not only in the rides, but also in the meet and greet character in his large form. And I believe in Florida they had this like Guardians like space, and they had a show, and you could meet the Baby Groot. But I don't know if they have that anymore because they have that new ride now. But yeah, so Fred Tatasciore. He's and that's additionally a reason why he's in I Am Groot, because it's a tribute thing. It's an Easter egg thing. So all that said, what is the future of the character in the MCU as far as where do you think he's gonna land after Thor: Love and Thunder and the trailer for Volume 3? Like,
I think Volume 3 is the end.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You think he's gonna die?
I don't know if he's gonna die. I just think it's the end. Like the story's gonna end.
You don't think we'll ever see Groot
James
again?
Gunn has said that too.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily mean all of them are gonna die.
Yeah. It just means that group is done.
Yeah.
You don't think he's gonna join another group?
No.
Really?
I don't think James Gunn would see the point in it. I think he understands. Like, he understands. Like, if he's going to get the story right and end it on a note that he wants to, if there's no purpose for Groot's story to continue beyond, like, the Guardians,
just leave it alone. Yeah. Interesting.
Let things end.
Yeah. I think so, too. I don't think that's the last time we'll see him, but I do think that's the last time he'll be at the forefront. So if we ever see Groot again, it'll be in the distant future, and it's just going to be a cameo. It's just going to be him.
Maybe just even a name mention. That's it, you know?
Honestly, I think it's that simple. I don't know that they're going to, and that's unfortunate, but it is that there are other characters that deserve the same recognition that this little tree has gotten over the years.
Let things come to an end.
Yeah, it's true.
And enjoy the run that they had.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, of course, in addition to that, revealed at the animation panel at San Diego Comic-Con, there's still 5 more episodes of I Am Groot coming.
Yes.
So I believe they are all Baby Groot. It just dawned on me that maybe they'll do some with adolescent Groot too at some point.
Yeah, maybe.
Just to fill in the blanks. I don't know.
Yeah.
But so that should be coming. That should be, and that's supposed to be part of season 1. So I don't know when they're going to announce that, but maybe that leads into the holiday special. We'll see. And then, of course, Almost Was. Any guesses?
No.
Yeah, because there are none.
No.
Absolutely none.
Absolutely nothing.
I think they knew exactly who they wanted. They got who they wanted. They had nothing more to do with it. I challenge you to imagine a world where Groot was practical, where he was an actual puppet, something that they made work on set. Not Rocket, just Groot.
I think it would be possible.
Yeah.
I mean, I just watched recently the ILM documentary on Disney Plus.
Oh.
And it's just like, they're the reason like why a physical Groot puppeteer could be possible. I feel like,
especially
or even
now.
why Doc Ock in 2004. 2004 like was possible. I think it would be possible. I mean, and also James Gunn is the person to do something like that, whether it be completely CG or physical and a mix of digital or completely physical,
especially with something like Slither.
So like I think he would have done it if he needed to, but I feel like he knew, like, it was like, okay, you don't really need to, but I think it would be so possible and so like awesome.
That would have been cool. I'd like to see that.
Yeah.
I'd like to see a formal, aside this one that I have the prom picture with.
Yeah.
I would like to see like a Groot, like a fully functioning big Groot somehow. I don't know where or when or how, but I would love to see that.
They should create like a tree at Avengers Campus, like, because there's like that spot where it's like reserved for whatever, who is it, for Stark, and
for Peggy.
And then like just have like a tree, but it just has Groot's face on
I know.
it.
Well, you've seen that giant statue in Argentina, right? Like
yes.
Like did that, and then there's that other. Was it Hong Kong or China? They made a baby Groot. It's pretty big, but it's also like almost sentient.
Yeah,
it's a sentient robot. I was like, what the? Yeah, it's kind of creepy, but it's very well detailed. I would love to see something like that. More Groots everywhere. Punch a tree.
Yes.
And so, last but not least, some suggested reading. This was kind of tough for me to pick because honestly, anything with him in it is really good, and it's not only because of Groot, but it's because of the surrounding characters. But of course, for Groot himself, 2015's Groot by Jeff Loveness and Brian Kessinger. This is the one that I was just crying over. It's a 6-issue arc.
Well, Jeff Loveness, that's the guy that just got hired to write Kang, the Kang Dynasty.
Yep. It's the guy from Rick and Morty, right?
And he also does Rick and Morty.
Yeah, that's him.
Salute.
Yeah. Very good. Very good series. 2016's Rocket Raccoon by Groot. By Groot. 2016's Rocket Raccoon and Groot by Scotty Young, Philippe Andrade, and Jean-Francois Beaulieu. 2017's I Am Groot by Christopher Hastings, Flaviano, and Marcio Menez. It's a 5-issue series. It's really great. And 2017's all new Guardians of the Galaxy by my friends Jerry Duggan and Aaron Cooter, as well as Eve Svorentina. It's a 17-issue series. Absolutely loved it. Got to read it. That's the one where they have that misinterpretation issue. And that, my dear friend, is the end of the show.
Groot.
I am Groot. I am Groot. I am Groot.
True.
So for the next episode, we don't have anybody lined up, but it was highly suggested that we perhaps take on another villain.
Ooh.
And so some suggested villains were Baron Zemo, as well as Ultron. But I will leave that ultimately up to you. You don't have to choose now.
Okay.
But we'll sit on it for a hot minute and think about it and see which one you want to choose. But it is definitely time. It has been a while.
Yeah. It has been a while.
We are Groot. Salute to Andrea, Robin, Melanie, Andrew, Jenny, Joe, Liz, Tyler, Claire, the Arachnerd, Ariel, Ashley, Nats, Laura, Ed, and Katie. Follow us on social at STRKCNTRST. And if you like what you hear, please review, rate, and subscribe.
Hit it.
I am Groot.
Click it.
I am Groot.
Click it.
I am Groot.
If you click it, I am Groot says I am Groot.
I am Groot. I am Groot. I am Groot.
Once again, thanks for listening, y'all.
I am Groot.
We will catch you in the next one.
I am Groot.
Bye.
I am Groot.
No, Groot. You can't. You'll die. Why are you doing this? Why?